Hi, I'm Mike Farrington. Welcome back to the boardroom. In this video, I'm going to install my newly restored Delta Unisaw. Step 1, put saw in place and self-congratulate. Step 2, add some dust collection. When this saw was made, dust collection was a broom and dustpan, so let's update that. Pro tip, a hole saw designed to install 6-inch can lights is close enough to 6-inch dust collection fittings. After screwing on this piece of plywood, I'm left to cut away some of the saw's body. And while I love my Unisaw, I love good dust collection better. Fairly simple, but super important. To this, I just attach a piece of 6-inch flex hose, as you'd imagine, and that's all I have to say about dust collection. Next up, a topic that isn't talked about enough, tuning up tools. All woodworking tools need to be tuned up. The more accurately they're tuned, the better they'll cut. So here I am aligning the table to the blade. This is the base for a tenoning jig with a dial indicator stuck to it. A piece of wood cut to fit the miter slot would do the same job. I use the same spot on the blade to ensure the most accurate measurement. So my starting point is I'm off by about 0.010 of an inch. So I make an adjustment, tighten things down, and remeasure. I like to leave one bolt tight in the front and the other just snug. Then I loosen the back too. This allows for smaller, more accurate adjustments. Getting closer, I messed around with this until I was within a couple of thousandths. Okay, here's another area to tune, a little less common. I have the blade tilted to 45 degrees and I'm checking the same measurement. After tilting the blade and measuring, I'm off by about 11 thousandths. To fix this, I've left the rear bolts tight and I've loosened the front too. I'll add some shims to lift the front of the table. I've cut out some brass shim stock. This is just trial and error. I add a little, measure again until I get nice and close. If your table saw burns when cutting bevels, this process could really help you out. So when it's all said and done, I get to about within 0.002 of an inch or so, which I declare good enough. While we're under the saw, why don't we do a couple of dust collection tips. First, urethane foam can be cut and stuffed into the area between the body of the saw and the top. I've heard of people spraying construction foam in there, but that seems overly permanent to me. This stuff cuts easy and can be removed just as easily. Next up, magnetic sheets are great at covering openings. On this saw, there are 3 main openings. The bevel in the front, the door at the bottom, and then there's another hole around the back where I think a blade guard can be attached. Anyway, all of this is in an attempt to keep flow directed up towards the blade. Next order of business is to install a fence. In this case, I'm going to have both my table saws share a fence. Naturally, the Unisaw would have holes drilled to install a Unifence. What surprised me was the Powermatic 66 also had holes drilled in the correct location. I did, however, open them up a little so I had some more play. Please note, at this point, I've leveled the 2 saws to each other. If you're wondering how would you get the 2 saw blades to be parallel to each other, well, at this point I was wondering the same thing. However, later in the video, I'll show that by adding a shim to the Powermatic saw, I was able to get both blades nice and parallel, so the fence works super good on both saws. Wanted to take a moment to mention my double taper sanding disc. When installed in a table saw, it sands the edge of a workpiece to a finish-ready surface and to a perfect 90 degrees. Solid wood, MDF, or plywood all sand equally well. If you'd like more information on how to get one of these for your shop, check the description below or visit mikefarrington.com. With the front fence rail installed, I turned my very short attention span to the back rails. I needed something to mount my Outfeed table to. However, the Powermatic 66 is 1 inch deeper than the Unisaw, so here's how I dealt with that. Making clearance for the miter slots. I don't know if this is how a metal chop saw should be used, but it seemed to work well enough, and now I'm marking for some mounting holes. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but this angle iron is an extra piece that I had from an old Biesmeyer fence that I had laying around. After drilling said mounting holes, I repeat the same process for the Powermatic saw and bolt them in place. Now, I am totally sure you have been sitting on the edge of your couch, clutching your pearls, yearning for the answer to the question, how will Mike deal with the 2 different depth saws? Well, I just cut a notch in this piece of wood. When screwing this block in place, I made sure to leave enough space to sneak a wrench in. Since there's some slop in the mounting holes, this will allow me to fine-tune the height as needed. And I want this piece to hang down 3/4 of an inch from the saw's table, as I'll be installing some melamine on top. Now it's time to get experimental. I already own a really nice sliding table saw. However, I don't use it all that much relative to the amount of space that it takes up. So I thought it would be fun to install one of these sliding table attachments. And my plan is to use both in real time and judge whether I actually need the full-size sliding table saw. I picked this one up for small money, but it's the second one of these I've actually owned. Years ago, I had one and used it for several years in my shop and loved it, but I sold it when I got a vertical panel saw. Now, between filming this video and doing the voiceover, I have been able to use the setup a few times. My thoughts are, no, I don't need my full-size slider, but boy, do I like it. However, I absolutely love this attachment. It's great for smaller stuff, and it really doesn't get in the way when using the saw in normal mode. Couple tips if you're considering one of these for your shop. First, setup is key. There's a million little adjustment points on this sucker and they all must be dialed in. Second, I recommend Loctite on all bolts. This will help prevent things from falling out of adjustment over time. Finally, the thing to make these attachments rock solid is to bolt the legs down to the ground. I haven't done that with this one yet, but I'm planning to. I did do it on the last one that I own and it helped greatly. There are a good number of bearings around this attachment that have this cam style adjustment. When adjusted properly, these ensure smooth and accurate operation. Please note, I am using the uni fence on the Powermatic saw and the space-time continuum has not torn open. Okay, so let's put aside the slider for now. Currently I have a piece of melamine that's balanced on some 2x4s as an outfeed. It's time to change that. Start by ripping some 2-inch or so strips and cutting them to length. Next up, I build a quick and dirty frame. Pro tip, if you're going to use melamine, chamfer or somehow protect the edges. This stuff chips easily and it can be sharp. Next up, I create clearance for the miter slots. I am generous in the material that I remove. No reason not to be. How about a song recommendation? Cult of Personality by Living Colour. I was probably 8 or 9 when that song came out. I remember hearing it on the radio and I loved it. Then seeing the video on MTV when we visited my grandparents' house. Bright yellow wetsuit, check. Rad hair, check. The extra kick on the bass drum and the 3 count during the intro, so cool. And who thought a guitar could even make those sounds? I really didn't understand the meaning of the song as a kid. I just thought it was a cool song that rocked. But as the years go by, that song has aged really well. So yeah, give it a spin. Okay, back to work. Now that the top is built, it's time for some legs. After milling up some suitable lumber, I install some adjustable feet. This is a center punch. It's to help locate where to drill the pilot holes. These feet work totally great. The only downside is they're 13 millimeters, so it's necessary to oval out the holes a little bit because I only have a 1/2 inch drill bit. After adding some diagonal bracing to the tops, I remove my awesome temporary 2x4 legs and screw these in place. Once the legs are on, I screw the melamine to the ledger I installed earlier. At this point, I'm ready to level the outfeed to the saw and of course sing while doing so. Alright, next up it's time to add a childish feature. After cutting up some 1/4 inch thick plywood to the correct sizes, I glue and nail those pieces into a box. Using the freshly installed slider, I cut a notch. I smack a block of hardwood into that notch and set aside to dry. The Uni-fence has a couple of different channels that will capture a bolt head, which I use to bolt a mounting block in place. After adjusting the mounting block to the correct height, I install my childish box with a few screws. I break out the mighty block plane to level the wood block to the saw table. Now, before you say what I know you're going to say, yes, dust will collect in here. Dust collects in fornicating everything. Fortunately, our blue planet has been graced by the glory of the shop vac. One of the downsides to any slider is that the fence must be removed to make a rip cut, hence the reason I've put two saws next to each other. The saw to the right will do most of my ripping. The system for setting the fence back to 90 that comes with the sliding attachment is no good. No problem. I made up this little square thingy, and reinstalling the fence and setting to 90 is now like a 20-second ordeal. I did a little fine tuning with the 5-cut method, got it close, then took the fence off and reinstalled it with my awesome square setting thingy. Did the 5-cut method again, and it's pretty darn good. I don't think I would impress a NASA scientist, but for woodworking it's totally good enough. I'm going to go ahead and assume that SawStop bought Excalibur, who is the original maker of this slider. This is a good thing because parts are the same. I was able to buy a second flip stop, which is always handy, and I bought the attachment new in box off a dude from Craigslist, but as it turns out, it was missing a leg. I was able to order both parts in a timely manner from SawStop's website, so that's cool, I guess. More fine tuning, I made sure the fence rail was consistent across both saws. Also, I added a 10/1000 inch shim to the Powermatic saw to bring it in line with the fence. So the process goes, set the Unisaw blade to the miter slot, set the fence to that same miter slot, slide over the Powermatic and use the fence setting and adjust the miter slot to the fence. Hopefully that makes sense. Final thoughts for the money. This attachment is very, very good. A quality full-size slider, even used, is many thousands of dollars. Both the Unisaw and the slider I'm in for about $500 or so. I thought the Uni-fence was a piece of junk at first, however, it just needed adjustment. I think it's a great table saw fence. Left to do is the overarm dust collection for the Powermatic, but that's for another video. Raw, unstoppable, pure athleticism right there. Hopefully this video was educational, entertaining, and not vomitous. If it was, send me your cleaning bills. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching.